Hi, this is Corey Johnston, and today's lesson is going to be a sequel of a previous lesson from the 7th chapter of John. We took it from verses 14 to 24 in the most recent one. We're going to continue verses 25 through 36 in this one. And before we review what we already covered in the previous lesson, we have to take it before the material we haven't covered yet. This is 6 months after the 6th chapter. The opening verse reads, "And after this, the same as the 5th and the 6th." But this takes place quite clearly at the Festival of Tents. That's one of the 3 command holidays when Jews were commanded to gather as one in Jerusalem, or the eventual location as it was written then, and celebrate. And this took place 6 months after the Passover. That's where the bread of life scene and the Festival of Tents commemorated their Exodus experience, during which time they lived in tents. So even after they became a settled people with fixed homes, permanent homes and fixed locations, they lived in tents for a period of weeks, and that also forms the time frame of this 7th chapter, which bleeds into the 8th. And we read that he had brothers who struggled to believe in him. They wanted him to show himself up in the open if he be true, and this was because their faith was lacking. They knew something was special in them. That he had, you could not grow up with a man like that and reach that conclusion, but they doubted whether he was the son of Elohim, even though they shared the same mother who had the testimony of the virgin birth. But he tells them, "My time is not ready, but your time is always ready." So what he does is he leads the brothers to believe that he is not going at all, but he actually shows up, but in secret, contrary to their request. And then there's a division. We're going to read one verse before our review of the most recent lesson, verse 12. "And there was much grumbling about him among the crowd. Some were saying he is good, but others were saying no, but he is leading the crowd astray." So what we read in the section which comes after it is Yahshua's teaching at the temple, and it's a mostly monologue. We only read one response in the 20th verse. We'll get that to there when we get there. But what comes after is the same reflection of the same dichotomy of opinion. He is making controversial claims, and whenever such a one arises and has some salience of credibility, there is a division about what if they're good or bad, and he's teaching. One of his ministries was teaching. He taught, he healed, he preached, he cast out demons, et al., etc. You name it, he did it. But he was teaching, and to the stun and amazement of the crowd, who recognized that he is a man without letters, meaning he was not formally educated at the rabbinical stool. But what Yahshua says is something significant. Verses 16 through 18. "Yahshua answered them and said, 'My teaching is not mine, but his who sent me. If anyone desires to do his will, he shall know concerning the teacher whether it is from Elohim, or I speak from myself. He who speaks from himself is seeking his own esteem, but he who seeks the esteem of the one who sent him is true, and no unrighteousness is in them.'" So this is some pretty extraordinary claims. He claims that the teaching that he teaches is not of flesh and blood, but it is of the Father on high. Even though he is flesh and blood, he is the direct revelation, so he doesn't need revelation. He's already an extraordinarily intelligent being. He forsook the attribute of omniscience in the incarnation, and we witnessed an example of this in Matthew 24:36, when he said, "Even I do not know the hour I will return yet." But he's presenting himself as a decision, and wherever he goes, whenever his name is mentioned, when we confront divinity, we confront a decision. So he says, if anyone wants to know his will, then they have to seek him out in prayer and confirm the accuracy or lack thereof of his previous claim. But he rests his case on the fact that he only esteems the Father in heaven, and he humiliated himself to esteem him on the cross. And this claim that he was sent to him is true. He who seeks the esteem of the one who was sent to him. He is the one who was sent to them from him, and there's going to be confusion about his birthday and his origins in the passage we're going to be covering today. but also in no righteousness dwells in him that is a claim for divinity. Then he turns it to, Moses gave you the law, but none of you keep the law. And he uses, that's when the crowd burst out in their sole interjection, you are possessed of a demon. They just lack the intellectual ammunition to respond otherwise because he just insulted them. And then he references the healing that he had performed on the Sabbath in the 5th chapter, which takes us all the way back. He healed a man. I think he was born blind or born invalid. I forget which one. But he's using that you circumcise on the 8th day. You do works on the Sabbath too. Works of a religious nature are permitted. Man was made for the Sabbath, not the Sabbath. Sabbath was made for man, not the other way around, as you read in the synoptic accounts. And then verse 24, the closing passage of the previous passage we already covered. Do not judge according to appearance, but judge with righteous judgment. So in the 15th verse of the next chapter, we witness him read, it is recorded that he says, you judge according to the flesh. So the same superficiality, appearance, flesh that's not even scratching the surface. Judgment is likened to an onion. You must unlayer every layer there is to unlayer in order to get to the center of what you need to get to. So don't judge by appearance, don't judge by the flesh. And verse 25, lesson itself. Therefore some of them from Jerusalem said, is this not he whom they are seeking to kill? So they're in Jerusalem. That's the site and location of the temple. Remember, this is the Festival of Weeks, and strangers from all over the Jewish diaspora would have been gathered in Jerusalem, dwelling in tents, but they also would have been at the temple. And the ones who are here say, isn't this the guy they're trying to kill? They knew this man by reputation. The word was out for him, and the Jews were trying to kill him. They were murderously motivated, and he is not bound. In the 8th and 9th, the 8th chapter, which this bleeds into, we read that they are picking up stones to throw at him, but before they could even see the one, aim the stone at the one they intended to throw it at, he had vanished because his hour was not yet. And that term comes up. So they eventually do succeed in killing him, but his hour is not yet. This is this midway point in his ministry. This is his 2nd year in Jerusalem. The first year he cleared out the temple. The synoptics record it in the final week of his life, but we also read John record that he did it in the first year. And so this is the second Passover, and then the third one is ultimately where and when they killed him. Therefore set some of them from Jerusalem. Okay. And see, he speaks boldly, and they say none at all to him. Could it be that the rulers truly know that this is truly the Messiah? So they saw this man. They knew he was on the top 10 wanted, the most wanted criminal in the Jewish religious system at that time. Yet he's there in front of them. He's proclaiming with boldness, without fear. And they are in stunned silence. They say nothing at all. So the crowd, this is distinct from the Jews of the crowd are distinct from the Jews, as John calls them, who are the religious ruling authorities. And they're noticing that they are not making good on their pledge. Here's this man in the center of the nucleus of the Jewish religious life, the spiritual vitality. He's in the very center, and he is making these claims publicly and boldly, and they want to know why the inaction, and they connect it to the question, could it be that the rulers, these men who are trying to kill him, know that he is truly the Messiah? So there was already a rumor and speculation that this man was the Messiah, the long awaited one, but the crowd's ignorance is displayed in the subsequent verse. But we know where this one is from, and when Messiah comes, to no one knows where he is from. So they knew where he was from. He was a citizen of Nazareth, but they had the mistaken notion, a sloppy, careless reading, if scattered, definitely not in a connected, coherent whole of the Old Testament, that suggested to them that he would just appear out of nowhere. He would come from heaven, and that would be it. But his birth date is identified as, his birth location is identified as Bethlehem, the town of David, in Micah 5:2. So therein, and he's also promised to be born of born of a woman in Genesis 3:16. But he makes clear that the juxt of his response and his rebuttal is to not focus on his earthly origins, but he claims to be heaven sent. What was he said in the passage that already covered? The one who sent him. So that's a self-reference, the him in that verse. Yahshua therefore cried out in the temple, teaching and saying, "You both know me, and you know where I am, and I have not come of myself, but he who sent me is true, whom you do not know." So these are fighting words to people who doubted and disputed whether he was the one who was to come, the Messiah, the long-awaited expectation of Israel, who would save the world, not just the Jewish people. And he charges them of because they rejected him, he makes the claim by connection that the Son is the fullest reflection and revelation of the Father himself. Ergo, to reject the Son is to reject the Father. They are one and the same. I and my Father are one. We read of in John 10:30, and by that we interpret to mean united in purpose, not singular in being, but they are singular in purpose and singular in nature and singular in substance. And the one who sent him, he charges them. The Jewish people would have been their pride and joy to know the creator of the cosmos and the creator of them, the one who had chose them. But he charges them of being ignorant of him, because here he is in the flesh, in the human form, in the human frame, and you are rejecting him. That is a sure sign as any that you are not in tuned and aligned with the will and the ways of the Father. But I know him because I am from him, and he sent me. So this is a claim of his heavenly origins. It is to John, above any other gospel author to whom we are indebted to, for his pre-existence, meaning he antedated the existence of creation itself. He was a co-creator of the cosmos. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with Elohim, and through the Word the world was made. But he is sent from him. He is functionally subordinate, though he is equal in essence and similar in attributes. There is some limitation imposed on the infinitude of his attributes because of the incarnation. But he does know him personally. He is not quite him, but he is so in agreement in purpose and nature with him that he literally knows him in all his facets. That is something no human can claim, because our knowledge is limited, and we can only know what apart from the revelation, we can know nothing of divinity or theology or anything else. But he didn't have that barrier that we have between us and divinity, because he was fully divine and fully human without compromising the other. So they were seeking to seize him, but no one laid a hand on him, because his hour had not yet come. So these men were at the mercy of providence. Everything was on a precise timeline and time scale. This hour, he still had another year left of turning the world upside down and changing people's lives and bringing health, healing, hope, and deliverance everywhere he went. And he continues to do that throughout these centuries. But they wanted to kill him. They wanted to... they thought they were killing the man, but they were killing a man. Even though they eventually did, they were killing a man who was eternally alive. He is the source of all life, the co-creator of the cosmos. Elohim is a team. One of their actions is never resisted by or opposed by any other, whether Father, Son, or Spirit. And but they're because they want to kill him, but they are somehow there's a physical obstacle. They couldn't do it. Something prevented them from, or someone rather prevented them from laying a hand on him. So they didn't even touch him. They were determined to seize him and probably to drag him to trial and ultimately kill him. But his hour was not yet. This was not the time or the location or the setting or the scenario that Providence had arranged. It would be 1 year later, his third and final visit to Jerusalem at the Passover. So John's 6th chapter is really the a year before his ultimate execution. This is slightly, so he has a little less than a year to live left. About a 6-month part in the 7th chapter. I just realized that right then and there. And many of the crowd believed in him and said, "When Messiah comes, shall he do more signs than these which this one did?" So they're noticing something special about the signs that he did. He has a reputation for miracles, which precedes him wherever he goes. He did things the likes of which no one had ever seen. He turned the water into wine in the 2nd chapter. He healed the government official's crippled son from a distance in the 4th chapter. He healed the blind on the Sabbath in the 5th chapter. He calmed the waves of the storm in the 6th chapter, and also that's just and also fed the miracles. And these are only the recorded miracles that are. So he had quite an impressive array of signs under his resume. And the inference of this question, the implicit inference, is that no man could do these things were he not the Messiah. They thought, maybe can there get anyone better than this? But they hadn't seen the whole. They hadn't seen anything yet. And they had a very limited window of perception and experience. So this is reflective of the ignorance of popular opinion, and we cannot come to a knowledge or an awareness of who God is by popular survey. This is something we have to figure out for ourselves, but we are all in this together. And many of the crowd believed in him and said, I just read that they believed in him, so this is the other side of the fence in the dichotomy and division of naysayers and acceptors and affirmers. The Pharisees heard the crowd muttering these concerning him, and the Pharisees and the chief priest officers to seize him. So the Pharisees are the ones who are basically in charge of the religious life, at least at the synagogue level. The Sadducees would have been more prominent at the temple level, and the Sanhedrin, the ranks thereof, would have been equally divided. But the Pharisees were they were the ones who were the most prominent of his antagonist. And the chief priest, he would have been a Sadducee at this time. I think it would have been Caiaphas, the one who ultimately killed him. And they respond the same way to the crowd, which had failed to lay his hands on them. But the word reaches the chief priest because they have the observance of people actually responding in faith to this man's message. In addition, so they renew their murderous resolve and rejuvenate it, and they send people to seize him. Therefore Yahshua said to them, "Yet a little while I am with you, then I go to him who sent me." In other words, my time is short, make the most of it. I'm not going to be here forever, even though I am eternally alive. You only have me in the flesh for another 6 months at this point. So you really, it just demands a resourcefulness of time in making the most of our spiritual gifts in him. We have access to him eternally alive. But we really want to make the most of what time he gives to us, because time in itself is irredeemable. It will be redeemed in eternity, but there's something irredeemable in the mortal experience we inhabit. You shall seek me, and you shall not find, and where I am, you are unable to come. So where he is going to be in heaven, and they're going to be searching for him, and they're going to miss him. They're not going to discover him, no matter how diligent or determined they are after coming to a conclusive rejection in this life. They're going to be wanting and wailing for him in the afterlife, and they're not going to be able. They're going to be denied heavenly access, is what he is essentially communicating. And so these are fighting words. These are bold declarations to the ones who are trying to kill him. The Jews therefore said to ourselves, "Where is he about to go, that we shall not find him? Is he about to go to the dispersion among the Greeks and to teach the Greeks?" So their minds once more are chained to earth. during the dispersion or diaspora, that was a scattering. Many Jews were lulled into Greece, and there were prominent Jewish communities throughout Greece, and that's where a lot of synagogues were. The Hellenistic culture. The Hellenistic culture was actually an interchange of cultures, so they were affected by the people they brought in as much as they were affected by the culture they exported out. So, but they're once more they're missing the whole point. Where I go, they're thinking they're incorrectly anticipating that he is referencing Greece. That's where he's going to go. Their minds are so changed to earth that they can't even not hear or see the reference to heaven. 36 and final verse. What is this word which he said? You shall seek me, and you shall not find, and where I am, you are unable to come. So that by that very question, by its very existence, their ignorance is exposed. They have the wrong idea, and they just repeat the question. But they're ultimately unimpressed and unconvinced with their own answer, as previously declared. So this is the collective cry of the Jews. These are the Pharisees, the religious rulers in this reference. They're distinct from the crowd, and they ask the question. And the passage which comes after us takes place on the last great day of the Festival of Tents, whereas this takes place sometime in the middle. I forget which verse. I should have underlined it, but I didn't. So that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much. I'm so glad to see you. Take care until next time. Bye-bye.